Hey everyone, John Doyle from OptixEQ, and I'm going to do a video analysis of the Pennsylvania Derby, which goes as race 13 at Parks on Saturday, September the 23rd. It's a $1 million race for 3-year-olds going 9 furlongs. So it's an interesting race. Probably will have some Breeders' Cup connotations, like where horses might go, a mile, a classic, depending on how well some of these horses come out of this race and how well they run in the race. When you start looking at the morning lines, I was a little surprised to see Reincarnate as the morning line favorite. I don't agree with that. Saudi Crown looks like the solid favorite, at least should be from the morning line perspective. But, looking at his form, I got some issues with him too in terms of vulnerability, but still should be the solid favorite in here. And you could see when you look at the plot, we have a plot fit that's yellow. That means it's okay. It's fairly predictable. The contention is a sun. That means it's, average contention. Don't expect a lot of contention in this race. And speed rating is average too. So that, typically when you just look at that, typically we'd want to be looking at quadrant 1 horses. 2 horses that fit the bill in terms of quadrant 1 are the 3 and the 4. They're both on standard and surface and distance. When you look at run styles, these are horses that prefer to run up close. You have those 5 horses that like to do that. I think that being that the 3 is in this race, and you can see he's above the par line. What does that mean? Is he could outrun the average par for this level to the second call, and he's above it pretty well. So that's the 6 furlong marker. And so this horse has a second call pace advantage over the rest of those EP types. The 4, even though he's in quadrant 1 and below the 3, there's some things we want to look at the 4 because he's kind of a developing horse. So for me, that would make horses like the 11, 10, the 6, those horses vulnerable when you have a horse like the 3, Saudi Crown, in here, because he's going to really put pressure on them on that second call. It's going to be hard for them to keep up. And none of them really look like they're going to be able to. Again, let's look at the 4 when we get to it. So I'm going to evaluate those horses when we get to the form cycle. I'm going to look at the 3, 4, and just the 11 because he is the morning line favorite and what I don't like about him. Then we're going to evaluate pressers. That's the 1, 2, 8. The 1 has no chance where he's a toss. He plots well below where he needs to be to win a race. So his preferred run style is to be a presser. That means to be kind of in that second flight. And, he's just relative to his form to these other horses, he's going to be nowhere near that. The 2 and the 8 are the other ones. The 8 is a circle on surface and distance, and the 2 looks like a nice big square. But we're going to look at the 2 because that may not be a reflection of his most current form. This horse kind of took a turn last race, and we've got to evaluate that. And then we are left with the closers, and that's the 5 and the 9. 5 kind of plots more like a presser. The 9 is kind of interesting, kind of plots oddly, kind of a little bit of a circle, but higher in quadrant 2 versus a square in quadrant 4. And I think we can explain some of that as we go through why that might be and why he might be an okay underneath horse, especially in this race. Okay, so let's get to the form. I'm going to clear this out. Okay, let's get to the grid. I'm going to look first at the number 3, Saudi Crown. 2 wins, 2 seconds. And you can see that kind of progression from an OptixEQ standpoint. So this horse has just kind of been improving, especially as the company gets harder, which is interesting. But just a couple of things to note. His first 2 races were sprints. Those are the ones he won. 2 races he's lost have been routes, but he's run very well. So the 8 furlong race in the Dwyer was a 1-turn race. And you see the notes designation, 1 turn. We thought he probably should stay there. So, this horse obviously get handled 2 turns because he came back and he ran a more improved figure. But he did have on his side that he was lone speed. If you look to the right, there only were 5 horses in this race. And he did get a kind of a weather. And when the weather kind of plays sloppy track, it's hard to pass horses at Saratoga. So he might have had a little bit of the benefit of the track in that race. So again, the big thing with him, improving, 3-year-old, looks great, fast enough, classy enough. the big issue with him is going to be, is he really a 9 furlong horse? Looks like he has an advantage over some of these, but, you know, we're going to take a look at another horse and see if we can project a little bit more upside in somebody else. So anyway, that's Saudi Crown. Let me clear this out. I'm going to go to number 4. And this is the horse I thought had a little bit of an interest, Magic Tap. Now, this horse obviously hasn't faced kind of company some of these others here, right? Hasn't been in graded stakes races yet. But there's another horse you can see developing nicely, OptixEQ 76, 92, 94, 98. Like to see that progression like that. And in the last race, I thought this horse, was a small field. It was kind of like, it was kind of a weird race. But notice the designations and the notes, the keywords, marathon. That means this horse wants to go a long distance, as opposed to Saudi Crown, who's more of a horse that we think is one turn, okay? And then the grit, this horse dug in. And if you look at the extended comment, he tracked the speed, stayed within range. And when that horse kind of turned the jets on, he came back and he was able to kind of pass that horse. So it could be a scenario that you get today, right? Because you could see the race shape. I'm going to just go over here to the right here. The race shape of that race is very fast, very fast. So he's tracking. First time he's kind of like, tracking a race where he's won. And then this horse who comes back and runs 2 winning races after this. The name of the horse was Film Star. And so he was able to stay with that horse when he went through that burst, and then was able to pass that horse. I think that might be the scenario he gets today. Now, 5-1 seems kind of short. I mean, I still probably would maybe take 5-1 on this horse, but still, that seems kind of short. I think the morning line, it's a little iffy. So let's wait. But that's a horse that's got potential on the win end, definitely in the exact end. So for me, the early pace scenario looks like 3 or 4 of the horses I want. I'm going to just quickly take a look at the 11 because it's the morning line favorite, Reincarnate. Never was really a big fan of this horse early in the years. He was kind of on the Derby trail. He's kind of plotty. You can see by some of these notes here, plotty. Plotty. What plotty means is the horse is kind of one pace. He doesn't have kind of acceleration. And he's going to need that with Saudi Crown, because Saudi Crown is going to accelerate in the mid part of this race. And, he's going to need to accelerate to keep up. Just don't see that. Don't like, that this horse was kind of given a time and comes back in the Los Al race, got an easy lead in that race and won, didn't run like a huge figure, and then comes back another 77-day rest. The Baffert horses haven't, like in this past year, haven't been horses that have come back off the bench and really kind of sparkled as in years past. So it could be just the kind of the quality of horses he has this year versus others. But a plotty horse chasing a really fast horse, I'm playing against the 11, no doubt. So, okay, let's look at the horses in the middle. We talked about the 2. 2 has that nice big square, typically a horse we love to play on the plot. This is going to be his 3rd race in the layoff, and just did not like the 2nd race off the layoff. It was in the same race as our buddy there, Magic Tap, who we talked about just before, the number 4 horse. Had some trouble to start, but just never got into the race. I just can't like back a horse off a race like that, especially a 2nd race off the layoff. We would expect improvement, especially off the 1st race, the maiden race. So I guess this is for Ortiz Pletcher fans. Gonna kind of stay off of that one. The other one that we talked about was I guess let's just look at the 8. Didn't like the fact he was a circle in standard, a surface and distance. And he's coming off a hard race where he had probably, says a tactics plus, which means that he had a good trip. It was all out to push by the place horse after a clean trip. I don't know. I'm not seeing upside off that race so much. Distance is a little bit, questionable on this horse. Nah. The 9 was an interesting horse, especially from an underneath perspective. Okay. Here's a horse that I think the thing with this horse is he started off his career as kind of a closer, right? I mean, he's run some good races where, initially right away, when he was running 7 furlongs, we thought this horse should stretch out. He had a good close, and then eventually they stretched this horse out. He had an excuse in his first 9 furlong race, and then he came back around a good second. 9 furlongs, he galloped out at fair in the Risen Star. He didn't break his maiden. He was in the Risen Star, but he galloped out well against closing against the pace there. Then he came back in the Wood Memorial, just laid an egg, just wasn't his race. Then finally broke his maiden, and it was a hard race. And the thing is about his last 2 races, he was taking, I think, out of his style. There were small fields, and you could see he was up close, and you could see the race shapes were fast. Okay, so this is not what this horse. That's why I think when you see his plot, you can see his plot. He's like a little circle in quadrant 2, and that's because of the races he was in. His most current races, he was in small fields chasing really fast paces. I think he gets a fast pace to close into today. He doesn't have to be up close because there's other horses that could put some pressure on the early pace horses. So I see this horse coming off the pace. And I think this horse, especially with that last race, I thought that horse showed a lot of gumption. I mean, it was another small horse field, but I mean, he ran a big figure. And I think this is a horse that, maybe on the improve again, and someone to watch it, because I think the distance suits this horse, and maybe he gets some pace to run at, especially underneath. He's going to be probably a big price. He's 15-1, and prefer him over the other Pletcher horses. Okay, so I mean, that's it in kind of summation. The 3 looks like the favorite, but I think the Magic Tap's got a chance to maybe on the upset. And if you're looking for horses underneath, take a look at Krupe, the number 9. Prefer him over the number 2, Dreamlike, in the as far as the Pletchers go, and he'll definitely be better odds. And that's the Pennsylvania Derby. We're going to be doing some focus this weekend with these other Parks races because they're really kind of interesting. So if you buy the silver plan, you'll be getting focus for at least 4 or 5 of these races, these graded stakes races. So, and I think there's some opportunity. Like I said, I think the Gallant Bob is the best betting race on the card. So this is John Doyle from OptixEQ. Check us out as @OptixEQ on Twitter, and go to our website, OptixEQ.com. Again, don't forget, when you go to the website, there's a lot of great information about our, about our products, and you can really kind of dig into these things if you want. You just go to the info section of our plot. Let me just pull this up to you so you can see. Go to info section. You can get all the information, videos, guides, everything you want to know. There's handicapping videos too. On our stream, you can see races we've handicapped in the past. So if there's any question on how to use this stuff, it's all there. Hopefully you'll enjoy it, and thanks for listening.